You're listening to the Murphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Murphology Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy, aka Murph, and I am here to give tips and information about group bicycling and bicycle touring with a focus on the Midwest and hopefully provide some entertainment for you as well. Well, with me today is Leah, and she just got back from a pretty epic trip of biking across the United States. So, hey, Leah.
Hi.
Glad to have you on the show. And she did this bike ride with her son, Oakley, but he's at school right now. So we're going to just have to hope that she can answer any questions on his behalf, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am excited to hear about your adventure across the United States. But I wanted to find out first, like, how you got into bicycling as an adult.
You know, I didn't learn to drive until I was 23 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I biked everywhere. I just really love being active, and I love being outdoors. And, you know, I biked just as my only form of transportation until I was 23. And then after that, it just sort of stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, never went away.
Cool. Well, tell us a bit about where you live and what the bicycling or the culture is like there.
So I actually live on an island off the coast of Portland. It's called Peaks Island, and it's a small island. It's about 5 miles around, a mile across. So the biking on the island itself is pretty limited. Mm-hmm. It's funny because a lot of people come out here to bike because of the beautiful ride around the island, but I always go off the island, and I just bike along the coast of Maine. It's beautiful because there's a lot of roads right here that go right out onto the peninsulas along the water, and you can go forever.
So is it an island that has like a highway between you and the rest of the land, or boat?
Oh, no. It has a ferry.
Oh, a ferry. Yeah. How cool is that?
Yeah. So the ferry, it's a commuter ferry. It runs once an hour.
Oh, okay.
It's fairly easy.
So you're not like trapped on your island until that ferry comes if it's coming every hour.
You're not trapped. You can feel trapped, but you're not. You're not trapped.
So yeah, a casual bike ride around the neighborhood is pretty much, roaming around the entire island, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well,
it's all of 15 minutes.
Yeah. It's a quick ride, yeah. But like you said, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what kind of biking adventures have you been on before you made this excursion across the United States?
Well, I've biked a bunch in my adult life, but nothing big like this. Like, I've done some 3-day trips with some friends. When I was younger, I used to get on my bike and try to get lost. That was the big fun, to just bike and take every turn I didn't know. I've always loved biking, but I wasn't like a bike enthusiast. It was just one of the things I like to do outside.
Right. So when you did like your 2 or 3 day bike rides with friends, was that like a camping kind of deal or a town to town?
That was to an Airbnb. There's 3 friends. My husband and 2 of my friends. We do this every summer. We go away for 3 days on our bikes, and we live it up. We stay in a nice place, little cabin on a lake.
Sure.
It's a lot of fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
That sounds very fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get into the Transamerica. How did you decide to go from a casual weekend trip with friends to months and months and months on your bicycle?
Well, it sounds kind of cheesy, but I'm a mental health counselor,
mm-hmm.
and I all of the work I do with people is about how it's just really important to pursue our goals, especially if they're healthy goals. And that's like the key. It's so simple, but that's like the key to a healthy, happy life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wanted to bike across the country. And Oakley needed to bike across the country. My son is really restless and doesn't do so well fitting in the routines of everyday life. He just wants to go and go and go and have adventures. So I thought, you and me both, buddy, we got to get out of here. I need to stop sitting around in my, in my office every day, and you need an adventure. So that's how. So
it sounds like it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, it was the perfect. It was definitely the perfect fit.
Yeah. Well, you started on the West Coast and went to the East Coast. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what were the starting town and ending town? I feel like it's Astoria, Oregon, but maybe I'm wrong.
It is Astoria, Oregon.
Okay.
And then it ends in Yorktown, Virginia, and it's not a straight line. It goes just up. It's it makes a huge zigzag across the country.
Ah, okay. And I interviewed a young man who did the same thing, probably about the same time as you. And I forgot to ask him, but is there ever a time that you come through Iowa on that route?
No.
Oh no.
We don't go through Iowa.
So you're probably south, like Missouri?
Yeah, we go through Missouri.
Ah, okay. Too bad.
Yeah.
Well, what was your total mileage? Do you remember?
I do remember. It was 4,359.
Wow.
I know.
That's really, like, do you ever just sit down and think about that? Like, I rode my bike over 4,000 miles. That's just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I almost don't believe it. 'Cause, knowing myself, I'm like, I did that? Yeah.
Wow. And describe the terrain of Transamerica. I'm assuming that you're on low traffic roads, maybe some highways, and then trails, maybe?
Yeah, well, no real trails. It's an incredible route because, it was created in 1976, and so it's been going for a while. And the route just takes you through all these small towns and on really small roads as much as it can. You don't really go near any big cities at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so whenever they can, they seem to stick you on these roads that are even like one-lane roads through like the hollers of Kentucky or whatever, where you don't see any other traffic all day. Sometimes you do have to go on a busier road, but there's always a wide shoulder. There's only one or two places where it didn't feel good because of truck traffic or a lane was closed and you're all pushed together. But really, it feels really safe, and everybody along the route is expecting bikers, which is really nice too. People have eye out for bikers.
Yeah, because when you say it started or was developed in 1976, it's a specific route, right? So people since 1976 have been taking this exact same route?
Yeah, this is the cross-continental one. There's also, or the cross-America one, but there's also, Transamerica has trails all over the United States. There's one on the East Coast, there's one a southern tier, there's one that goes around the Great Lakes. So they're really trying to make these routes, if bikers keep using their routes, then those routes get known as bike friendly, and it kind of builds on itself. The safety builds on itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to do this for 4,300 miles?
Yeah, 84 days.
84 days. And did you take any days off, like any breaks?
Yeah, we took 6 days off.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
I
saddle
kind of
time.
wish we'd taken more, but fall was coming, and we had a rush to get back before it got too cold.
And then, you mentioned when you were on your weekend travels with friends, you do like Airbnbs or cabins. How were you on this trip? Were you camping or hotels or hostels?
Yeah, so we didn't have a lot of money for this trip. We had to be really low budget. I wasn't working. It was kind of crazy. But anyway, so we camped, and I also love camping. We camped, I think it comes out to like 62 of the nights, something like that. And the other nights we've stayed in, you're allowed to stay in fire stations along the way or church basements. So there's a lot of ways to make it much cheaper than it would be if you were staying in hotels. Mm-hmm. Other people do, for sure. They do. We call them credit card travelers.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. But there are campsites that the route has a place to stay probably every 50 to 75 miles. So you just have to plan it.
And like you mentioned, the fire stations or the churches, again, they are used to bike traffic, so they're probably, if they've been welcoming in the past, they'll be welcoming in the future as well.
Yeah. And they, it seems like they really enjoy it because it's I think it's fun to have people bike through from far away, and doors just flew open.
Ah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then for any, moms out there who are thinking about traveling 84 days with their teenage sons, how did that go?
Well, this is when I wish he was here as well to talk to you. But, we did really well. We got along really well. I mean, of course, we got really sick of each other, and we would, he would say, "You're so annoying," and I'd say, "You're even more annoying." That would happen. But that would happen, I think, with anybody. And I think what was really cool about this is that I feel like it transformed our relationship a bit in that, I'm still his mom, he's still my kid, he still drives me crazy, but I really needed him, and he knew I needed him. So it kind of changes the whole dynamic to be like, this isn't me nagging you, this is me saying, you're my partner, and I'm about to pass out, I need some help here.
Right.
If you don't help me with whatever happens to be. So it was very visible, but I was a person, not just his mom. So, yeah, I feel like we have quite the bond right now.
Yeah, I'm guessing that your relationship changed dramatically with this trip.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's incredible. That was a huge bonus. I mean, it's a big reason why we went, and I feel like it worked.
Yeah. And I will probably mention it at the end of the podcast, but you have a really cool blog about this, and I just laughed out loud. There was a point, I think Oakley was actually writing that version of the blog, but he was complaining that he wasn't going to get to use his phone very often. And so you guys had compromised that. I think it was maybe once a week that he got to get on the phone and talk to his friends.
Yep.
And I can only imagine, me as a grown-up, if somebody told me I could only use my phone once a week, I would probably be like, I don't think I can go on that trip.
Yeah. It was pretty funny, because, but everything's just so, when all you're doing is biking, there's not a lot of other distractions, and so things become really clear. And he was able to acknowledge that even in talking to his friends once a week, he would always be homesick the next day. And he'd always be grumpy the next day, and he'd say, I'm just in a bad mood because I talked to my friends yesterday. So it became sort of like he became self-regulating about it. Like, do you really, like, sometimes when he'd have his week or his time to talk on the phone, he would choose to use it to, like, watch videos.
Oh, wow.
And he has good friendships, but he knew it was too hard to kind of bridge both worlds.
Yeah, I was going to say it's two completely worlds at that time.
Yeah, and they don't get it. Your friends at home don't really, as much as they love you, but especially teenage friends, they can't picture it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I did read that you have other children. Were they, like, jealous or excited, or do they wish that they were on the trip as well?
I think, well, they're all different, but I think I have two sons that are in their 20s. I think they were excited.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were really helpful in the preparation of, the trip, helping me, like, take my bike apart and all that. And they enjoyed reading my blog, and they were just excited. I think my daughter, who is 20, I think she was jealous.
Mm-hmm.
Not that she wanted to do it. She made it perfectly clear that she was really glad she didn't have to do this. But there was there's this sort of like, I don't know. I think they could see that it became this big thing, and she felt like she was on the outside of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when you look at the actual route, do you recall any, like, favorite towns that you visited?
Yes. I do have a favorite town. And, I mean, there was a lot of beautiful places. It was mind-bogglingly beautiful. It was such a great way to see the country. But I really fell in love with this town called Wisdom. Yeah, and it's in Montana. And it is this tiny little town. And it is surrounded by miles upon miles upon miles of just sagebrush.
Ooh.
And, yeah, and the population is like 159 or something like that. It's tiny. And it was just this magical town. Everybody there, they probably were all cattle ranchers, I would suppose. But the night that we got there, it just smelled so delicious. And there was a little saloon, and we went in, and the whole town was in that saloon. And they had the door open, and they were making pizzas, and a dog walked into the saloon and peed on the floor, and everybody just laughed. It was just so casual, and everybody was so welcoming to us. So then that night when we went to sleep, we were sleeping out in a field that they had allotted for travelers right outside town. And there was, like, coyotes and, like, yodeling and cows lowing all together, and the stars were just incredible. And it was both of us. It's both of our favorite towns. We just couldn't believe that such a place existed.
And you said it's Wisdom, Montana?
Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds like a hidden gem.
Yeah, it really was.
Wow. Yeah. So on these 84 days of travel, anything go wrong, like mechanical issues or flat tires or whatever?
Oh, yeah. I think a lot went wrong, but I think that was part. Yeah, we had a lot of mechanical issues. Our bikes were built from recycled parts by the local. It's called the Gear Hub, the Portland Gear Hub, and they were really great, strong bikes. But we were carrying almost 100 pounds on each bike, and it's just wear and tear.
Yeah,
its spokes break a lot. We went through. We got several flats, and then we actually wore out a tire made of Kevlar, which was supposed to be impossible to do, but it just happened.
Wow.
So, yeah, the chains broke, brakes got worn out. So we probably ended up in 6 or 7 bike stores along the way getting things repaired. We try to repair things on the road, but you often can't. Like, I'm not that mechanically savvy. I can't fix spokes on the road.
Right.
Other people can, but I can't.
So how did you deal with that? I mean, were you out in the middle of nowhere, or were you close enough to some town you could walk in?
No, we were always in the middle of nowhere when it would happen. Lucky us. But we would hitchhike in town, and it was so easy to hitchhike. I don't know. I mean, I am a woman with a son, so I'm pretty safe to pick up. But also, like, desperation, I would go up to, a car parked on the side of the road and knock on their window and be like, can you take us into town?
Sure.
And, people, one of our big lessons was that everybody will help you if you ask.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody will necessarily volunteer to help you, or people don't necessarily come to you. But if you come to somebody and say, look, we're stuck out here in the desert, people help. And then we met the most wonderful people who would pick us up. And those were some of, like, our most memorable interactions with people. You're sitting in a car for 20 minutes with somebody and getting to know, what their life was like in these obscure, tiny towns across America.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That would be just pretty cool.
It was really cool, yeah.
And how about weather issues?
There were three main weather issues. The first was the heat. A lot of the trip was in the high 90s, the first half.
Oh.
I had a good bout of heat exhaustion along the way. But like crazy hot, like crazy going up a pass in high 90s with a 100-pound bike.
Mm-hmm.
Just too hot. So that was a challenge. The wind was a challenge. It's very, very windy in the middle of the country. And I feel like there's no such thing as a tailwind. I think that it's a whole, they're never going the way you want. And sometimes it would be literally, blowing a sustained 30 with gusts up to 50.
Oh,
and you'd be biking. You had no choice. And so you'd barely be moving. But, what are you going to do? And then the rain, we didn't mind biking in the rain that much. I really don't love camping in the rain.
Mm-hmm. Getting
out when it's raining and taking down a tent in the rain is just the worst. And like trying to cook breakfast in the rain because we cooked all our meals. So, but the rain wasn't so bad. That was only at the end, at the last week once you hit the East Coast. So.
I did a trip this past July, just within the state of Iowa, but it was an 11-day trip, and the temperatures were right around 100 every day. And gosh, it really messes with you physically, but then also mentally. Like, you're just like, I can't breathe. Everything's so heavy. I didn't do it for as many days as you, but I definitely know how that feels. Like, you just can't drink enough water and nothing tastes good. And I feel for you.
Yeah, and sleeping in that heat is really hard too, because you have a sleeping bag.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get in that, so you just sit there just lying on it, wishing the night would end.
Right.
It's crazy when it gets that hot.
Just thinking about how hot you are the whole time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Wow. How was navigation? Like, did you get lost at all, or was it pretty easy to follow the Trans-American Trail?
It is pretty easy. The times we got lost, we did get lost. We actually figured this out the other day. I think we did 129 miles extra. Getting lost, which really isn't that bad. I mean, looking back, who cares? At the time, it's devastating,
right.
When you realize what's happening. But every time I got the maps are great. They're so clear. But the one time I got lost, the farthest distance, I had just hit the Mississippi River and just headed south on it, and there was actually a tailwind. And I was just so happy. I just didn't look at the maps, and I went like 25 miles out of the way.
Oh.
I was just like, look at us on the flats going flat. They're just going fast. And then I would often get lost in towns because, again, I just get distracted. The map said it all, but I'd be like, oh, look, a coffee shop. Oh, look, So, but other than that, it was very clear.
Yeah. And you briefly mentioned your bike setup. You said you both had bikes made with recycled parts, but I'm assuming that you had bags on the front and bags on the back, especially if you were, hauling 100 pounds. But do you want to tell us a little bit about your setup?
Sure. So we both had front and rear panniers, and then we both had handlebar bags. So another bag across the front, and then my son carried the tent because he is stronger than me. I will tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
And the bikes were really incredible because the way that the Gear Hub did it is that they had recycled frames, and then all the components, that have wear and tear, wear out. They were new, and they completely matched each other.
Oh, okay.
The frames were different, but the components were the same. So that way, we only had to really learn one system, and if something broke, we might have a spare, for the other person's. But we could just bring one set of everything.
Right.
So, yeah.
And after the trip, can you now change a spoke, or are you still at the point where you're like, I'm going to call someone?
I could change a spoke. It's more about not having all the what you need to do it. It's hard to. I could do it like if I had all the time in the world and I could sit there and make sure my bike was true and the wheels were going. But when you're sitting in the desert and it's not flat and you don't really have what it takes to all the the tools I just sometimes just feel a little overwhelmed. And it was never one spoke that broke. It'd be like four, and it would just get overwhelming.
Yeah.
So
I'm the
same.
same.
But I mean, yeah, I can fix it. I could change tires and chain links and all those little adjust gears, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely a different experience, though, when you're at a bench inside of a building with every tool you need versus, like you mentioned, in the middle of the desert with, dusk on the horizon.
Mm-hmm. And the 100 degrees. You're just like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I always love to ask everybody if, with all that gear on your bike, do you ever carry luxury items, like whether it's a book or a special something that you probably don't need but you just want?
Yeah, well, we were kind of homeschooling a little bit because he was missing a semester. My son was missing a semester of school. So we had to carry his books. And then one of the nice things that we did on the trip is, so I would have a book that I was reading to myself. He would have a book that he was reading to himself. And then we had a book that we were reading out loud.
Oh, yeah.
And what we would do is we'd read out loud. And then while we biked during the day, I would tell him the story of the book I was reading to myself, and he would tell me the story of the book he was reading to himself. So there's so much storytelling. But it does make, we had a pannier full of books. But it was entertainment, We would and we'd stretch out these stories so they'd last for, we'd probably spend 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
Recounting the stories that we'd been reading at night in our tent.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a luxury item.
And all I can think about is how heavy books are.
Yeah, it was so heavy, yeah.
But it was a non-negotiable. You had to carry them, especially if you wanted to.
And I also carried, we also carried pillows. That was pretty luxury.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big pillow fan. Yep.
That makes a big difference when, you wad up a sweatshirt as a pillow versus a real pillow.
Yeah. Yeah, I could sleep anywhere with a pillow.
Well, can you think of any, do's or don'ts when you're thinking about this tour?
I would say don't listen to the things that everybody's afraid of. And something we experienced a lot is everywhere we went, people would tell us what was going to kill us in the next state. Oh my gosh, the winds of Kansas are going to kill you. Oh, that pass, you'll never get over. It's due to hail. Oh, those dogs in Kentucky, they're going to eat you alive. There's always something to be afraid of. And so I think that we spent a lot of time really anxious. And in retrospect, we are fine. All you have to do is bike. That's all you have to do. Yeah. And you just deal with things as they come. It's the worrying about it that's just, don't worry about it. It's all going to unfold. So that's a do and a don't all at once. Do just go for it and don't worry.
Sure. And you mentioned that you especially when you were catching rides into town, that you met some great people, but anybody you're staying in touch with?
Well, the whole world of social media has opened up some relationships that are really nice. We met a couple of, other bikers out there, not a ton, but it was fun because we exchange cards and we still kind of follow each other. So those people, for sure. There's some people that are still out there. There's somebody, I met somebody who's doing a 6-month tour. We actually met somebody who's out there for 19 years.
19 years?
Yeah, he just never stopped.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. But yeah, so, online friends. And certainly if I went back through, there's places that I'd want to, I don't know, are they friends or just people you'd like to know again? I would like to do this trip again, and I would love to go hang out, go back to the Mallard Duck Campground and meet that funny man that wanted to give us a ride and see him again. That would be really fun to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. They're not necessarily, friends you want to have over for dinner, but just to have the engagement again and to hear stories, and you're right.
Yeah.
Well, now fast forward to the finish. What was that like?
The day of the finish or just being finished? The day of the finish was it was incredible. Coming through Virginia, the last 50 miles, maybe a little bit more, is all on a bike trail.
Oh.
And so it's really nice. It's a really wide, perfectly paved bike trail. And so you have this natural sort of transition from all the stress and strain of the biking to just biking. It's all flat on this trail. And so we could ride next to each other and just sort of just relax. our big finish came, the best part of our finish was the night before we actually finished. We were camping in this campground, and it was a beautiful night. We had a fire, and my son was really he's gone to camp, so he's really into like camp rituals. And he wanted to talk about highs and lows, and then he wanted to talk about what we appreciated the most about each other. I mean, it was crazy cheesy. And then in the morning, and he always slept out by the fire instead of being in our tent, which was really nice. And then in the morning, as we were packing up, the craziest thing, we heard this huge sound coming, and I literally thought it was like a military jet or something. And then suddenly, like, the whole sky filled with grackles, and we've all seen flocks of grackles, but this was like thousands. I've never seen so many grackles.
Wow.
And it was so loud, and they filled our whole campsite, and then they flushed out some hawks and some turkey vultures that started circling over the ground, over the sky, and then a raccoon came running across our campground, and it was just so crazy loud, and we couldn't help but feel like, oh, this was like a send-off party, like we had done it. That was the finish, to be like, look at us in this party out here.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was great.
Wow.
Wonderful.
And then you're finished, you make it back home, probably enjoy the first couple nights of like, whatever you want to eat out of the fridge and a bed and shower and all that good stuff. But have you adjusted to life, not being on the bike all day, every day?
It's actually quite an adjustment. It is a hard adjustment. I want to be active all the time now. It's hard for me to think of being still. And of course I'm exercising, but it's very different to go from biking for 6 to 8 hours a day to like exercising for an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a strange thing. And I have to get a job. I closed my private practice, and now I like the reality of that. And I find myself talking about like my next adventure, and my husband, who's like infinitely supportive, is like, before you talk about the next adventure, let's talk about getting a job. So everybody's really nice, but it is an adjustment. Like, oh yeah, I got to figure that out.
Have you actually been on your bike since you've gotten back?
I have.
Oh, good.
And I think I'm going to be a winter bike enthusiast this year, actually. I have a friend that I bike with every Wednesday morning, and we've both decided that this is the winter that we're just going to see if we can just not stop, even in the snows of February.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I don't know what the weather is like there in the wintertime. Is there snow on the ground all winter?
Yes.
Ah, so does that mean you'll have to upgrade to like a fat bike or a bike with big tires?
Well, the Gear Hub in Portland is giving a seminar on winter biking and putting like studs on your tires.
Oh, sure.
And whatnot. So, I'm just going to have fun with it this year. For me, it's really important to be outside, no matter what the weather, or I go crazy. Like in the winter, if I don't just get out there, I can't handle it. So this is going to be, I'll try it all out this year. And it will be snow. I mean, they plow, but it is snowy and icy for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I can't remember the quote, but it's never really about the weather. It's just about the clothing selection. So you can always add more wool or, more layers, and you'll still have a great time out there.
Absolutely. I just watched something on YouTube about a man who biked across Antarctica. So I'm like, I think I could handle going for an hour-long ride once a week. No matter what the weather. Yeah.
Well, would you recommend to people who have the dream to do what you did, can they do it, or should they do it?
Absolutely. And I don't even think you need to train, because it trains you.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it. There's no reason not to do it.
Awesome. And you briefly mentioned this, but do you have adventures on the horizon?
I always have a lot of adventures on the horizon. It doesn't mean that I have like a date in mind for them, but
right.
I would love to do a lot more bike touring. This totally woke me up to like this. It's just such a great way to see the world and to meet the different people of the world, and it's such a perfect pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't looked it up, I would highly recommend you check out ragbri.com, because it's a 7-day tour. You don't necessarily have to carry all your gear. I always do. But the nice thing about it is it's, all the roads don't really have traffic, because there's 15,000 bicyclists that kind of take over. So at least look into it. It's a really fun, at least I think of it as a really fun tour.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people want to learn more about your adventure, your blog, or a website, is there a place they can go look and read?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a blog called bikemumm.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's BIKEMUM.com. And I'm also in the midst of writing a book about using it outdoors as a venue to parent, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to seeing a book on the horizon, and for sure check out bikemumm.com, right? It was .com? Yep, bikemumm.com. I really enjoyed reading through all of your different entries.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed meeting you and hearing about your adventure, and look forward to following your blog to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, how about a touring tip? Let's talk cycling must-haves. Typically, when you're on a multi-day tour, you have several panniers and bags with lots of space for all your stuff. Here is my list of 10 must-haves that I always have on my bike, no matter how far I plan to go. So first on my list is a patch kit with levers and a spare tube. I have a tiny under-seat bag that holds my patch kit, the levers, and a spare tube, and they're all smashed into this tiny bag. I only need to get into it when I have a flat, but I know it will be there when I need it. Also stuffed into that little under-seat bag is my number 2 must-have, which is a CO2 cartridge and inflator. Both are very small, but critical if I get a flat tire. You could substitute a bike pump instead of the CO2 cartridge, but most bike pumps are too long for the underseat bag, so you'll have to find a home for it in one of your other bags. Number 3 must-have is a multi-tool kit. Most of these are pretty compact and include anywhere from 10 to 20 different tools that will help you with most adjustments you may need while on the road. An extra tip, be sure to buy a multi-tool that's stainless steel so that your tools are nice and strong and they won't rust. Number 4 must-have for me is some sort of charging device. On my touring bike, I have a hub generator and a USB port, so all I really need to remember is a phone cord or whatever cord I need. On the other bikes that I ride, I bring along a power bank, which can be plugged in when I have access to electricity and can usually charge my phone or lights several times. I also have a solar charger that sometimes I carry along. When using the sun, it rarely gets above 50% full, but it's good enough to keep my phone in working order. On most tours, my goal is to be as unplugged as possible, but I still like to have the option to know my phone is ready if needed, or if wanted. I mean, everybody's got to use social media at some point, right? Number 5 on the must-have list is skin protection. This means sunscreen, lip balm with SPF, and bug spray. You can easily get compact sizes in these products, and in my opinion, it's well worth the space that they take up versus dealing with the after effects of a sunburn or a bunch of mosquito bites. Number 6 is a bike lock. So when on bike tours, typically I'm never very far from my bike, so instead of carrying a heavy-duty lock, I made the choice to use a lightweight lock. Potential thieves will hopefully see the lock, which mine is bright orange, and keep moving. I think if my bike is a target and someone really wants to steal it, they're probably going to steal it no matter how heavy duty my lock is. So if I can just deter a thief from taking my bike, it's well worth carrying a lock. Next up is number 7, a rain jacket. I have a Showers Pass raincoat, which was a pretty expensive addition to my bicycle accessories, so that's one of the reasons it makes my must-have list. No need to spend hundreds of dollars on an item that just hangs in my closet. I have it folded up real tight into a Ziploc bag, so it just hangs out waiting to be used. Obviously, it's for rainy weather, but it also works nice if I get caught outside and the temperatures drop lower than expected. Number 8 must-have is a snack of some sort. I almost always have a Cliff Bar. It's packaged good enough that it can get shuffled around in my bags. Most of my tours involve stops where food is available, but it's nice to have a little something to get me going when the going gets tough. And of course, if by chance food is not available, at least have some calories to get me through to the next stop. Number 9 is lights. Even when you just know you'll be done on the bike before dark, there's always a chance darkness creeps in way too soon. Maybe you had a mechanical issue or a flat tire that took too long to repair, or maybe that last town was so much fun you stayed much longer than expected. For those reasons alone, I always have some sort of front and rear light. My touring bike, as I mentioned before, has a hub generator, so both my front and rear lights are connected to it, but my other bikes do not, so I always have extra lights. You just never know when you're going to need them, and you'd be surprised when you bike with a group just how many people have been stuck at dusk without lights. If you keep spare lights on your bike, be sure to check them regularly to be certain they are in working order. So my last must-have is water. Yes, water. Dehydration is no joke, and weather conditions, along with sweat, can suck that water right out of you. Get cages attached to your bike frame that hold water bottles, or carry a water bladder. Moose Trex makes a handy round bag that fastens to your handlebars and holds a water bottle perfectly. Carry more water than you think you'll need. Seriously, do it. Your top 10 must-haves may be different from mine, but definitely think about some of the items you can't be without and find a place on your bike to bring them along every ride. That's this week's touring tip. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Check out Murphologypodcast.com to find all kinds of great info, and email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. I appreciate your time today, and thanks for tuning in to listen to the Murphology Podcast. I will leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from Belva Davis. Don't be afraid of the space between your dreams and your reality. If you can dream it, you can make it so. Think about it.